Trucker Dump, episode 188. Well, the news is really light this week, so we're trying something different again. We've been teasing a mega breakdown saga from listener Wunuvakind in recent weeks, and it turned out to be far too long for the listener feedback segment. So I'm sure, much to her surprise, Wunuvakind's story is featured on the show today. I enjoyed it immensely, and I hope you do too. As for the little bit of news there is, we talk about a new bill pushing tax credits for most truckers. We talk about new roundabout rules coming in some states. Surprisingly, CARB is slowing its electric truck expectations, and an autonomous truck gets sidelined by bird poop. All those stories plus more. In the listener feedback segment, Charles, Farley, and William all just want to stop by and say hi. Driver Dave is back to scolding me again, and Cici shares her favorite Trucker Dump episodes. And since I said Cici, Cici, pick up that guitar and talk to me.
Welcome to Trucker Dump, where you'll get one driver's insights and sometimes humorous views of truck driving and the trucking industry, and pretty much anything else he feels like dumping on you. This podcast is brought to you by AboutTruckDriving.com. Resources to help you understand the world of truck driving through the use of stories and a pathetic attempt at humor.
G'day, all, or should I say good evening. Yep, normally I release this podcast on Saturday morning or afternoon, but tonight, well, I got home unbelievably early on a Saturday morning, which is not very common for me. So I was not in the hotel today, so I'm doing this from my couch. How you like that? Like you care one little bit. Hey, this is Todd McCann here. I'll be your host. I've been a trucker for 25 years, and I've written 2 trucking ebooks. One is called How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job, and the other is Trucking Life. Both of those are awesome for beginners, but can also be enjoyed by experienced drivers. You know, Trucking Life has a lot of funny, interesting stories in it, and How to Find a Great Truck Driving Job has a list of questions that you can ask potential employers when you call. So if you're interested in that, you can head on over to abouttruckdriving.com, where you can get both of those books in a bundle for 50% off. That's only $9.99 for 2 books, and one of those, Trucking Life, includes a 9.25-hour audiobook with it. Now, I was going to end that 50% off deal at the end of January, but I think I'll just leave it going for a little bit longer because it's, well, you know, why not? As for the show today, well, like I said in the opening, not a lot of news, but we did have a nice long audio comment from Wunuvakind. So we'll be hearing from her later on about her mega breakdown saga. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. But for now, let's just hit that little bit of news that we do have. All right, let's start off the show today with a little bit of sad news. According to overdriveonline.com, Robbie Bachman, who is the co-founder and drummer for Canadian rock band Bachman Turner Overdrive, died earlier this month at the age of 69. Now, while that is sad, you may be thinking, okay, what's that got any relevance whatsoever to do with the trucking industry? Well, it really doesn't, except for, did you notice the name of that band? Is there any word in there that you hear over and over on the podcast? Bachman Turner Overdrive. Hey, little known story I found over here. Had no idea. Apparently, Bachman Turner was just called Bachman Turner, but they wanted something a little edgy, a little punchy sounding, they said, kind of metallic sounding, to add to their name. And they thought, well, what are we going to do with that? Well, one night in 1973, before the band was even popular, they stopped at the Colonial Steakhouse at Brown's Brothers Truck Stop, which is close to the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor, Ontario. And they looked over there and, they were getting something to eat and stuff. And they looked over on the magazine rack and there was a copy of Overdrive for sale. They read it. They thought the name Overdrive sounded pretty cool. And they thought, let's use that for our name. And there we have it, Bachman Turner Overdrive. Who knew? So there's your little factoid of the day. Rest in peace, Robbie Bachman. Wherever you are, I hope you're taking care of business. Okay, by the time you're hearing this little story, it may not even be relevant. That's because we are talking about the Freedom Convoy that happened last year, started on January 28th in Ottawa, Canada. And that's where a bunch of trucks went up there and they blocked the roadways. They blocked some major bridges across into the U.S. And they were basically protesting the mandates for the vaccine. Well, I found this article over here on landline.media. Vehicle protests will be dismantled during Freedom Convoy anniversary. So basically what the article says is the Ottawa police is not going to take it this time around. As we know, they let them go on for quite a while last time around, and it caused all kinds of havoc. People were arrested. There was bank accounts that were taken over by the Canadian government and put freezes on. It was a big mess, and the Ottawa police just say they're not going to let that happen this time. As soon as trucks come in there and start blocking the way, they're going to jump right on it. There's going to be very little tolerance when it comes to this. Now, honestly, they're not even sure that anything's going to happen. Apparently, the leader of the whole thing last time, yeah, those stupid notifications, I always forget to turn those off. Ugh. But anyway, James Bowder was his name. He's the co-founder of the group Canada Unity, and he was basically in charge of this new one. They were calling it Freedom Convoy 2.0. And they were going to go back to Ottawa again. Possibly they were talking about Winnipeg too, and another thing I saw. But anyway, they were planning on going back and kind of redoing the whole thing over again. But he announced that in February. But then by late December of this past year, he said, nope, it's canceled. Actually, he says it's out of service. So he cited that there had been multiple security breaches on him and personal attacks against him. So he decided not to do it. Well, okay, whatever. I don't really know if those vaccine mandates are still going on up there, but I guess maybe they are if they were planning on doing another one of these. Anyway, the police has said that everybody is welcome to protest peacefully, but if things start to get out of hand, they will crack the whip. So not that any of you will probably go up there and be a part of that, but hey, just so you know, if you were planning on it, well, first off, the main part of it has been canceled, but if you do decide to go up and show your support, just be friendly, okay? You don't want to get your butt thrown in jail in Canada. Wouldn't be as bad as if you got your butt thrown in jail in Mexico, because you might never return, but I wouldn't want to be stuck in any jail, period. Canadian or Mexican. Although, Canadians are pretty nice, so I imagine it wouldn't be that bad, would it? Let's not find out. Found this one on landline.media. Sometimes I wonder if our governments come up with these acronyms actually before they come up with what it stands for. This one I found on landline.media. Ship It Act claims to boost supply chain. But of course, SHIP IT stands for something, right? Safer Highways and Increased Performance for Interstate Trucking Act. Okay. Well, this is a bipartisan bill that's going forward from a Republican and a Democrat. And basically, it is designed to do a few things. The first is it will allow states to issue special permits for overweight vehicles and loads during emergencies. Okay. Second, it'll allow truck drivers to apply for Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act grants, which I don't really know what that means. If you're interested in that stuff, look it up. If I'm not interested in it, you're probably not going to hear about it here on the show. The third thing is streamline the CDL process, making it easier for states and third parties to administer CDL tests. That's a good thing. 4 is expand access to truck parking and rest areas for commercial drivers. Okay, that's a big one. We can always use more truck parking. But the one I really wanted to talk about here was the 5th one, and that's attempt to recruit truck drivers to the industry through targeted and temporary tax credits. So what this means is that if you are a current truck driver who logged at least 1,900 hours in a year, you could be eligible for a $7,500 tax credit depending on your income. And if you're a new truck driver just coming into the industry, you could be eligible for a $10,000 tax credit. Now, unfortunately, there was another article that said exactly what those income limits were, and I have lost that. And quite frankly, it's not even important right now because, well, This is just in the bill stage. If it makes it to the stage where it actually passes and becomes law, then I'll let you know what you're eligible for. But anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. You know, there has been talk of like a tax credit or something to retain current drivers. And I was just kind of hoping they weren't just going to like dish out money. I mean, we all like money, right? But the last thing our government needs to be doing is spending more money right now. We got a big enough deficit as is. But a tax credit, I guess that'll work. It's better than, just paying cash outright, which is going to cost a lot. But anyway, like we said, the Ship It Act, it just is mainly there to try to boost the supply chain, get more truck drivers into the industry, make things work better, by getting CDLs faster, open up truck parking, rest areas, all that kind of stuff. And, just help the industry move smoother in general. I'll keep you up to date on that one, as God knows how long these things take. I may talk to you about this, in a couple of years. Who knows? Anyway, find this one on landline.media for all the details. And I'm sure you could search Ship It Act if you want to get all the details on the income levels and what you would be eligible for. We just mentioned truck parking and how we really need it. Now that Ship It Act is hoping to, increase truck parking spaces. Well, here's a story over on CDL Life about why we just can't have nice things. Apparently, a Virginia way station was offering overnight truck parking to, truck drivers because the Troutville rest area on I-81 was closed for a while for renovations. Well, they have now put a stop to that. And why? Well, I'll just read you the title of the article and it will explain all. Virginia way station banning overnight parking due to increased incidents of littering, vandalism, and unsanitary practices. Way to go, truckers. You get something good and get some extra parking when they had shut some off from you, and you screw it up. Way to go. What are we going to do with you people? Seriously, folks, if you want businesses and states to offer parking to you, and lots of it, how about treating it well? Try not to make it your personal trash can, or worse, your personal toilet. Found this one on CDLLife.com. Shame, shame, shame. All right, let's head to landline.media for this one. States pursue roundabout rules for trucks. Yep, roundabouts and trucks, we all know, man, lots of these states are putting these roundabouts in. And, well, love them or hate them, they're here to stay. And why is that? Well, because the statistics from the Department of Transportation show that roundabouts show a 75% decrease in injury crashes and a 90% decrease in fatal crashes. So that's why they're here to stay. And honestly, if you know how to work them, they're pretty great. You don't have to wait around. You're not having to come to a complete stop if nobody's coming. You're not having to wait on a light, especially one of those that are just timed and doesn't have the way to trigger the light or anything like that. Those are awful. You're sitting out in the middle of nowhere waiting on a light and nobody's coming for miles and you can see it. So I don't mind roundabouts too much. It's just that there's always that one person who gets in there and screws it up. They don't know how to do it. They dart out ahead in front of you and because they don't understand what's going on, or they just sit there forever while you're trying to get on the roundabout and they're sitting in front of you and they just won't make a move. It's like, come on, move. So anyway, a few states here are trying to do something about that. First is Indiana. This is kind of the boring one. That's why I'm going to hit it first. Basically, they say in the past they've always hit up professional truck drivers about roundabouts and getting advice from them. But this Senate bill in Indiana will make sure that they ask locals where these traffic patterns, where these roundabouts should be added according to the traffic patterns and all like that. Basically, they want to get more input from the public rather than just rely on truckers for this. Okay, that's all fine and dandy. But the big one to me here is Arizona. And they're taking, well, I guess Washington and Wisconsin and Indiana have already enacted some of these rules here. But Arizona is planning to, basically, it's a bill that would give large trucks permission to use 2 lanes to navigate through the circular intersections, including roundabouts. So that is, basically a lot of truckers will try to stay in their lane, but it just, your trailer goes into the lane just a little bit. But this is basically just saying you can take up as much of those 2 lanes as you want to. And that is, of course, to keep from other vehicles from trying to pass you around those roundabouts. That gets a lot of trouble when that starts to happen. So I like this fact, and I really like the fact that Arizona is planning on putting up signs that basically say, trucks have right-of-way in a roundabout. I love that. I think that should be on every roundabout. Colorado is the other state we're talking about, and they are going to basically do the same thing about the 2 lanes for a trucker to be able to use 2 lanes, but they are not including the signage in their bill. I hope they change that. But anyway, what are your thoughts on roundabouts? You like them? You hate them? Just kind of blah? Or does it just really depend on where it's at? Sometimes it boggles my mind, when they've got like 3 roundabouts going into right into an industrial area or something. It's like, what'd they do that for? Yeah. But anyway, if you're interested in this one, check it out on landline.media. There are further details I went into, but not very many. So have at it. All right. You know me. I love to hate on California. Well, found this one on Transport Topics. That's ttnews.com. CARB proposes exemptions for transitions to electric trucks. Yep, CARB, the California Air Resources Board, the organization we all love to hate, they are, looks like, kind of backing off a little bit on their strict stuff. Like right now, for instance, let's see if I can find it here. The latest modifications for their regulations, they say 10% of box trucks and light-duty package delivery vehicles are supposed to be electric beginning in 2025. That's just 2 years from now. So 10% of box trucks and light-duty package delivery. Wow. They must be 100% in their fleets by 2035. Electric work trucks and day cab tractors must equal 10% of their fleets by 2027 and 100% by 2039. And sleeper cab tractors must be 10% electric by 2030 and 100% by 2042. Well, they're backing off that a little bit. Basically, there's the ATA, the American Trucking Association, and the CTA, the California Trucking Association, jumped in here and identified some major flaws with this. And I'm not going to go into the details on this except for basically to say that they are just not going to be ready for it. All right, let me just read this paragraph here for you because it sums it up nicely. The plan, if approved by the CARB board, includes a provision to delay zero-emission truck purchases up to 5 years due to charging infrastructure construction delays and a right for the fleet to buy a California certified truck with an internal combustion engine when there is no electric truck with equivalent configurations available for purchase. And it says, however, motor carriers will be required to make a strong case to be granted exemptions. So what that last part means is basically for over-the-road trucks or even some of these local cartage trucks, like hauling something out of a port, like they might have to go 400 or 500 mile round trips to deliver that freight. And there are very few electric trucks that can meet that requirement today. So they're saying if there isn't one of the trucks available, they should be able to purchase a California certified truck with an internal combustion engine, to get the job done. And that makes sense. So, you'll never hear me say this probably ever again, but good on CARB for realizing that this is a problem and they're just not ready for it and they need to get their butts in gear, but the infrastructure is just not there. The charging and all that stuff is just not there, and it probably won't be in time for these guidelines. As I've always said, they're jumping the gun here. They're getting the cart way before the horse. So good on them for slowing down a bit. If you want all the details on this one, check it out at Transport Topics, ttnews.com. Hey, you remember in the last episode, in the feedback segment, we had Cici write in, and she was explaining how her job worked and, how she was local and home most every night, and she liked it, and she was brand new, and she was encouraging everybody to not just think you had to go over the road. And, that if you wanted a local job, you could get a local job if you look hard enough. Well, this article over here on thetrucker.com backs that up. This article talks about a survey that was done by Trucker Path, which of course is the app so many truckers use to find parking. They book freight through it, routing, all kinds of stuff it does. But they wanted to know, they asked a question, how often do you prefer to return home? And they were given 4 options. Every night, several times a week, several times a month, or always on the road. Now, they say 24% said they wanted to be home every night. 36% said that they wanted to be home several times a month, 25% several times a week, and only 15% said that they wanted to be on the road all the time. Now, here is the good news. Of those 15% who wanted to be on the road all the time, they said 80% of drivers were on the road all the time. They basically had the job that they wanted. Likewise, for the several times a month group, which was 36%, they said 89% of those got to do so. So that's even better. 74% of drivers who wanted to be home several times a week actually got home just as they were planning. That's awesome. Now, the worst of these is 63%, and that's the number of drivers who actually wanted to return home every night. That would be their ideal job. Only 63% of them were getting to do so. But you know what? 63% is still a pretty high number. And honestly, it would probably be a little bit higher if the local pay was better. But there's just a lot of drivers who aren't willing to, take a huge pay cut to be home every night. I know that's my ideal. I mean, I would love to be home every single day, but I can't make anywhere close to the money I'm doing it right now. So, hey, if I can be home on the weekends, that's good enough for now. Maybe eventually I will find that perfect job where I can bring home buku bucks and be home every day. And even better, I'll be, working like 9 to 5. I'm sure that's going to happen, right? Well, you never know. People do find their perfect jobs. And this survey here proves it. Check it out over on thetrucker.com. And lastly, let's end up with a fun one that Trevor Dunkel pointed out to me over in the Trucker Dump Slack group. CDLlife.com. With a title like this, there's no way I couldn't report on it on the Trucker Dump, right? Bird poop was enough to disable a self-driving truck, driver claims. Okay, so this was on Facebook apparently, and some trucker saw a autonomous vehicle pulling into the truck stop, and there was a driver there with him, and the pilot stated that the truck had been completely disabled because a bird had pooped on one of the cameras. So I can't help myself. This is so funny. I mean, they're like, yes, autonomous vehicles is the wave of the future. Okay. But some bird poop is going to totally dismantle that. I love it. Somebody made a comment in here that said, that's not good when bird poop can disable one of these self-driving trucks. Exactly. Actually, they say Waymo, which is one of these autonomous companies, they are aware of this issue. It's been happening for years, and they've actually designed a little mini windshield wiper on the lens to get rid of this when it happens. That's very interesting. I guess, when the camera and the computer sees, hey, I can't see quite right. Let's run the windshield wipers on the camera and get rid of that bird poop or whatever else is splattered up there. Anyway, I just found this hilarious that, some bird poop can put a self-driving vehicle out of service. Amazing. Yeah, I think we got a long way to go, but they keep saying it's right around the corner. Well, we'll see. Just check this one out at cdllife.com. And thanks to Trevor for pointing this one out. God, I can barely get through it. It's cracking me up. Okay, well, that's going to do it for the news. Told you there wasn't a lot. So let's just get on with the main topic. One-of-a-kind's epic breakdown saga. Take it away, One-of-a-kind.
All right, so let's talk about my epic breakdown saga. I don't know how you're going to edit this, Todd. You're going to have to cut it into many parts because it's a long story with stories within the story. So
there's an easy fix to that. Just don't edit it into smaller clips.
I'm in Salt Lake City. I have a load that I cannot deliver. I do not have enough hours of service, so I'm going to take it to our yard and I'm going to transfer it. And I've never been to this yard before. And it's part of a local trucking company there that they just lease spots. So I get down there, I pull in the wrong way, and I am stuck. I have to back all the way out, or so I think, because there's a gate that's locked that you have to have some sort of sensor to open. And so I'm sitting there and I'm parked and I'm calling my dispatch to see where I'm supposed to go to get into this yard. And all of a sudden, there's plumes of white smoke coming out from under my hood. Now, this is the middle of October. It's not overheating. It's not, And to top it all off, one of my good friends, her truck had just burnt to the ground. So I'm freaked out. I grab my wallet and I set it on the driver's seat, get my dog over on the driver's seat in case I have to go, and I go and open the hood. And there's just white smoke pouring out from everywhere. Now, mind you, I am not mechanical. Pretty much when you speak to me about mechanical things, I hear the thingamajig goes in the whatchamacallit with the thingamaboop.
I'm with you.
So I go out and I look and I go over and it's over by like the alternators where all the smoke is coming from, and it stings. So I sit there with the hood up, I turn it off, and now I'm like, okay, so now I have to call roadside. And here comes the guys from the trucking company, and they're like, you're supposed to go in over there. I said, well, I kind of figured that out, but right now my truck is blowing so much smoke, I don't know what's wrong with it. So they come over and they take a look, and he said, I think it's your air conditioner compressor, but let's get you out of here. I'll open that gate. You can turn around and we'll get you over where you belong. And I'm like, okay. So it starts, it drives. It's just I can't see anything because there's so much smoke coming out from under the hood. So I get turned around. They lead me over to the other entrance where I'm supposed to be, show me where to put my trailer. I get it T-called. Now, mind you, I literally could not. There was so much white smoke coming up around the windows that I could not see in my mirrors to back. So I'm literally backing by these guys standing back there and telling me left or right or left or right. Yeah, it was bad. So I get it in there. I drop the trailer. I pull forward. I call roadside. The guys looked and went, yeah, it's your air conditioner compressor. The whole engine compartment was filled with Freon. So, okay, stuff happens. It's mechanical. Mechanical things break. I'm not really concerned about it. So I call roadside. Roadside gives me a tow. They tow me over to Freightliner. Freightliner says, this is a Thursday. Freightliner says, we can't even look at it until Monday. So they put me in a hotel. Everything's fine, whatever. 3 or 4 days later, it's all done. We fixed the air compressor, we cleaned the engine, blah, blah, blah.
All right, let's start a count. That's breakdown number 1. Continue.
All right, cool. So we jump in the truck and we're off now. I'm supposed to be home in like 4 days. So, and I'm in Salt Lake City. I'm 8 hours from home. And they're like, oh, well, why don't you just go ahead and head on home for your home time. We'll give you a load to Southern California. Drop it off, head on home for your home time. I live in Las Vegas. And I said, okay, that sounds like a good plan. So I grab a load. I am not 30 miles outside of Salt Lake City when my truck starts throwing a code. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I stop at this little Fillmore, Utah loves. I love that place. Lots of parking. Anyway, so I pull in there and I'm like, can you tell me what code this is throwing? And they check it and they said, your NOx sensor is not working. And I said, can I drive it this way? And they said, yeah. And I said, okay. So I call roadside and I said, here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to deliver this load. And then I'd like to take it back to Las Vegas and put it in the Freightliner there while I'm on home time. And they said, yeah, that sounds like a good plan unless it starts to derate on you. And I said, well, if it does, I'll call you guys. I'm not sitting around. I just sat for 4 days in Salt Lake City. They're like, okay. So I do get it back to Las Vegas. I put it in the shop there. I probably took them a day or two to fix it, but I was home for like 4 days.
Breakdown number 2.
So I go to pick it up. And now, mind you, I live across town from the Freightliner place there. I'm a good 20, 25 miles away because Las Vegas is really spread out. So I go back, get the keys to the truck. My husband helps me load all my groceries and stuff into the truck. And he's like, I got to go sleep because he works nights. He's like, I got to go sleep. And I said, yeah, don't worry about it. Take off. He said, well, if anything's wrong with it, just call me and I'll come back and get you. And I'm like, okay. So I get everything loaded in the truck. I get everything put away. I put away my clean laundry. I get all my groceries in the fridge and my little freezer that I have up on the bunk. And I go to start this truck and it will not start. It says PCP something. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a good drug right now. PCP something not speaking to. So anyway, the computers aren't talking to each other. So I walk back into Freightliner and I'm like, I don't know what you guys did, but my truck won't start. And so they came out and they looked at it and they're trying to figure it out. They're all puzzled. One of them said, I've never seen this code before. I'm like, this is a Freightliner dealership. That's kind of scary. So finally they put it on a charger. They get it all charged up. It turns over. It starts. We let it run. All the codes go away. I'm like, okay, cool.
Breakdown number 3.
Get in the truck. Now I don't have a trailer because I'd left my trailer in California in the yard because the Freightliner in Las Vegas has very little trailer parking. So I'm bobtailing back down to Southern California to grab a trailer. My dispatch calls me. He's like, how do you feel about Texas? I said, I like Texas. I'll go. And they always ask us because it's not, I think I've been 3 times in a year and a half. We go out there. We actually have a pretty big yard and stuff out there, but they just don't have a lot of business out there at this point. I'm like, yeah, I'll go to Texas. Texas sounds cool. Nice trip across the I-10. Yeah, it's all good. He said, well, you're going to pick up a trailer at the yard. You're going to have one drop in El Paso. Then you're going to deliver in Dallas. And then we're going to send you to Beaumont. And we're going to send you back up to Washington State. I'm like, okay, perfect. Sounds like a good thing. I've just been home. So I go down, I get the trailer, I'm driving across the I-10, and this is one of the stories within the story. I get to El Paso. I don't know El Paso well. I've only been a couple times in my life, and let's just say in El Paso, if you make a wrong turn somewhere, somehow, you end up at a Mexican border crossing. So now I'm sitting in this line of trucks. Okay, I love Mexico. I go to Mexico all the time. I actually even speak a little Spanish, but I am in a truck that I know is not supposed to go to Mexico. I have no passport with me. I have a real ID, but I have no passport. So I'm freaking out. There's no place I can turn around because I'm pinned in by all these trucks that are going back to Mexico. So the look of panic on my face must have read through the windshield because here comes this border patrol. I roll down the window. He says, you don't belong here. I said, no, you are absolutely correct, sir. I said, and then I'm start freaking out. I kind of melting down a little bit. I said, I know this truck isn't insured for Mexico. We're not supposed to go to Mexico, and I don't have my passport. All I have is an ID, and I can't turn around. And he's like, calm down. I'm like, okay, I'll calm down. So he says, I'll be right back. I said, okay. So he comes and he gets in my truck and he guides me through like this impound lot that's filled with all these semis that are seized for bringing whatever they weren't supposed to bring across the border. And he has me turn around in there and he says, where are you trying to go? And I showed him and he's like, oh, well, you should turn left up there instead of right. And I said, my GPS said to turn right. He says, yeah, because it's trying to take you to Mexico because it's quicker to go across the road to Mexico. I'm like, okay. So I get to this drop, and of course we all have a great laugh about me trying to illegally cross into Mexico.
Okay, clearly this isn't just about breakdowns. This is about problems in general. So let's change the wording to problem number 4. Onward.
They unload whatever they need to unload. Everything's fine. Off we go. Now I make it up. I'm going up to Dallas. I make it up to Weatherford, Texas. Now, the way they set up our Texas runs is you always do a 34 before you deliver, so you have a full clock to make that long run back from Beaumont back to, well, I was going to the Portland area. So I get there. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to fuel up. I'm park. There's a big Petro there. I'm going to park here. And I pull into the fuel islands and I get all fueled up. I get in. My truck will not start.
Problem number 5.
Now it's like flashing PCP, MCM. I don't know what all it was saying, but it's like flashing through like 10 different codes. You know how that shows up. I'm like, oh, that's not good. So I do what our maintenance always tells us to do. Turn off the truck at the main switch. I know it's kind of like unplug it, see if it works. But I'm like, okay, so I do that. It won't start. I do this like 3 times. It won't start. So I call roadside. I said, look, I'm at a Petro. I'm in the fuel island. I have my flashers on so that nobody tries to get behind me to get fuel because it's really busy here and I can't move. And they're like, okay, so let us call the Petro and they'll send someone over to you. And I said, okay. So I fiddle fart around with it some more, turn it on and off. And I actually get it started. So I roll it over to the shop and say, hey, I was the one that was stuck in the fuel island. And they take a look at it. They run the codes and they said, well, you know, we can't do anything. It's all Freightliner. You have to take it to Freightliner. It's up the street. And I'm like, okay. And so they clear all the codes. And I'm like, I have a half hour on my clock or something. I'm like, I can't do it today. So I roll up and I park. And it's running fine all night. And of course, me being a girl, I'm like, well, if it's not yelling at me, it's not broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Figure it out when I get back to like our shop. Okay. So I get up to Dallas. I deliver. Everything's fine. 2 days later, it's running fine. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to Freightliner. I'm going to try to get it back home. I go down to Beaumont. It runs fine. I leave Beaumont. I get 80 miles west of Amarillo. And I stop for the night because there's tornado warnings. A tornado set down like 20 miles from where I was from.
Problem number 6.
And I am a West Coast girl. I don't do tornadoes. I might see a funnel cloud in the sky once every 10 years, but no, we don't do tornadoes. So that was a long, scary night. And anyway, I end up stopping in this rest area, 80 miles west of Amarillo. And I go to the bathroom. I take my attack dog. I travel with a dog that protects me. She's a 16-pound pug. She might rip off your little pinky if you break in my trunk. But anyway, that's another story. And I come out.
Okay, I had to break in here for a second because did you notice Wunuvakind kind of cracked herself up? So I guess I'm not the only one. Carry on.
I start up my truck. It will not start.
Problem 7.
I turn it off and I turn it on. It will not start. I turn it off and I turn it on. It will not start. It will not start. It will not start. It will not start. So I call roadside. Roadside says, okay, so we're going to send a tow truck out to you, but we're going to see if they can get it started. I said, well, if you can get it started, it seems to run a couple of days and I could probably limp it back to our shop. He said, okay.
That's going nowhere good.
So I sit there for 6 hours. 6 hours.
Okay.
Okay, story within a story. The tow truck shows up. Big, fancy, one of those that hauls like the truck and the trailer setups. Big wrecker. These 2 guys jump out, and I swear to God, they had home-cut mullets. They were so stereotypical Texas boys. It was crazy. I'm like, well, and my first thought was, oh, they have mullets. My second thought was, if anybody can get this truck started, they can.
Sure.
So they pull up and they're tinkering around and they're crawling underneath and I don't know what all they're doing. I'm just standing out there with my dog. They can't get it started. Okay, so we're going to tell you, we'll tell you to Freightliner in Amarillo. I'm like, okay. So they get the tow truck all hooked up. Now, mind you, these boys are stereotypical Texan, rural, great guys. Absolutely the nicest people in the world. But, yeah, when you're from, like, California or something, that stereotype and I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. 80 miles in a truck with these people. But it gets better. Wait, it gets better. But wait, there's more.
Oh, boy.
So we were pulling down and out. We're like 20 miles from their shop. And he said, I need to stop at the shop and get, I don't know what he said I had to get, some mechanical thingamajig that goes in the whoop-de-doodler. I'm like, okay. So we pull in, and he goes inside, and his buddy goes inside. Now, the buddy seemed to be just kind of like a helper. And I'm standing there, and it's taking a while, so I grab my dog, who's already all freaked out. And I take her, and I'm walking her around, and it's dark. All of a sudden, I feel somebody grab my arm. I turned around. I was ready to swing. And it's this old man that looks exactly like the 1970s version of Dukes of Hazzard's Uncle Jesse. Yes. And he sounds like him, and he talks like him. And he's like, excuse me, ma'am, would you like to come inside? Because we're trying to get your company to pay us before we take you all the way into Amarillo, because it's a really long haul and we have been screwed by companies before. And I'm like, sure, not a problem. Okay. So we go inside. My cell phone will not work in their building. It has bad connection, but that's actually an important part of the story. So we get there, and Uncle Jesse starts telling me, he's talking to me while his son's trying to do, I don't know, whatever. He said, well, this is my son. We've been in this business for like 40 years. And I'm like, oh, okay. So have you received payment from my company yet? I'm waiting for banjos. He's like, nah, we're going to have some dinner first. You want to have some dinner with us? I was hungry, so I said, okay.
Wow.
Absolutely fabulous food. His wife cooks it and then brings it to them. And he had called her and said, we have an extra person, bring some more food. Southern hospitality. Gotta love these guys. So now we're an hour into the stop. So now it's starting to get late. And he says, well, I guess we got to figure out how we're going to get paid. You going to pay with a credit card? And I said, sir, I'm a company driver. You need to call Master Fleet, because it was a weekend. You need to call Master Fleet and they will arrange to have you paid. Oh, okay. I'm not sure I know how to do all that, because we have a secretary, but she's obviously not here right now. Okay. All right. So I'm sitting there. I'm sitting on this old beat up couch that they have in their shop. Dog sitting in my lap. Two mullet boys come in, and I never did get their name. I don't remember any of their names. And I hear Uncle Jesse on the phone. I don't know what to call him. Uncle Jesse on the phone. And he says, well, ma'am, I don't know how to do that. So I don't know how we're going to get paid, because I need to get paid before I take this truck to Amarillo. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. Oh, well, whatever.
Okay, at this point, I think this obviously qualifies for problem number 8.
And so I don't know what she's saying, the Master Fleet lady's saying to him. All of a sudden, I hear him say, well, I don't know how to send an email. And he turns around to the two younger boys with the mullets, and he's like, y'all know how to send an email? And they're like, nope, we don't know how to send an email either.
Wow.
And I'm like, I know how to send an email. What do you need to email? Please get me out of here.
Yeah, please.
So I go in. They need to email some picture. I take a picture of the paper. I'm like, I have to step outside because my phone doesn't work in this building. So I stepped outside. I called Master Fleet, and the girl says, I don't think I've ever had anybody tell me they don't know how to send an email. I said, it's Texas. It's rural Texas. It's way different out here. I said, okay, what do you need? And I sent it to her. And she's like, all right, give me about 20 minutes and I'll get the numbers and stuff back to you that they need. And I said, okay. So I go back in, and Uncle Jesse and I are talking. Super, like I said, super, super nice people. And Uncle Jesse's like, so what made you become a truck driver? And I started explaining to him about my career in the casino industry. And I was a pit boss. You would call me a pit boss. That's actually a misnomer. For 30 some odd years. And he's like, well, I like to play blackjack, but I don't math too good.
Math too good?
And I know better. Now on, I need to tell people that I was like a maid or something because I should know better. Every time you tell somebody that you've been in that industry, they want to tell you all their gambling stories, and nobody means any harm, but it's just like, been there, done that. So finally, I go back outside. They've sent the credit card. Okay, it's all good. Uncle Jesse's going to go home and go to bed now, and the son's going to take me. The other guy disappeared. I don't know what happened to him. The son's going to take me into Amarillo. By now, it's like 10 o'clock at night. I'm like, okay. So off we go to Amarillo. We pull into the Freightliner. I go and check in. And the guy's like, I don't think we can even look at it until, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 days. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't care. I called and I said, I need a hotel. So they set me up with a hotel in Amarillo. The guy at the Freightliner was super nice. But while they were unhooking the truck, he told me all about his divorce and his ex-wife and why she's a bitch.
TMI.
And his custody battle. Yeah, it's like it's Texas. These people tell you everything. And I'm like, okay, that's nice. Have a good day. I got to get to my hotel. So I go to my hotel. They call me the next day and they say it's done. I'm like, okay, cool. I don't know what they did. I'm not mechanical, remember? So I'm like, okay, cool. It's running. This is awesome. So I get in the truck and we're all ready to go. I'm driving down the road and I make it to the pass before Trinidad, Colorado on the I-25 right at the bottom of the pass. All of a sudden there's smoke blowing out from under the hood.
Gee, that sounds like problem number 9.
And I'm like, okay. Then it says it's going to shut off. So I pull over and my radiator is gone. I mean, it's there, but it dumped every bit of coolant I had out on the side of the road. And I'm like, oh. So let's see. I have no cell phone service because I'm in the mountain. Fortunately, I had a couple bars on my Qualcomm, so I sent to my dispatcher. I'm like, I just blew my radiator and I have no cell phone service. You need to call roadside and have them send somebody to me as soon as they can. Okay. So it takes about 4 hours sitting on the side of the road. Here comes a guy in a service truck and I'm like, He says, well, they want me to check and see if you broke a hose. I'm like, I didn't break a hose. Trust me. It's coming out the bottom of the radiator. I can see that. So he puts his little pressure test on there. He goes, yeah, your radiator's blown. I'll have to come back with the tow truck. And I said, okay. He said, I'll be back in probably 40 minutes. Okay. So here we are 2 hours later. He finally shows up with a tow truck and somebody with they didn't tow the load with the truck. They just towed the truck and then another truck showed up for the load. So he sees I have a dog. He says, I don't let dogs ride in my truck. And since you probably have dog hair all over you, you can't ride in my truck. And I'm like, okay. He says, but you can ride in your truck while I tow it. I don't know that that's legal, but whatever. I didn't care. Get me off the side of the road. I'm sitting back there with my dog. So if you have the driveline out of your truck and it's being towed, that is the roughest ride you will ever feel in your life.
For the record, I believe you are correct that being in a vehicle that's being towed and you're inside it I believe it is illegal. If you're listening to the show and you know for sure, please email me at truckerdump@gmail.com and I'll relay that information in the next episode. Pretty sure that's illegal though. You know, I'm going to qualify that as problem number 10. Wow.
So we had to go through a weigh station. So I laid down so nobody could see me back there. Cause like I said, I don't know that that's legal or not. So he calls me and he says, so did you get a hotel set up? Cause I told him I'm probably gonna have to get a hotel because it's late. And I said, yeah, they sent me to the Days Inn. I said, but they also set me up an Uber ride. So you can just take me to your shop. He says, we don't have Uber in Trinidad. I went, oh, I didn't think about it being that small. Okay. And he's like, what hotel? And I said, the Days Inn. And he said, okay, well, I'll just drop you there. And he literally pulls in, tell him my truck, drops me in the Days Inn. Now, the Days Inn is an older hotel. It was clean. It was okay, but it reminded me of Bates Motel. I don't know why. I'm on the ground floor in this It was a nice room, and they have a restaurant there, which is good because they don't have like Uber Eats or DoorDash or anything there. It's too small. The restaurant seemed to think of itself as a fine dining restaurant. It had a lot of Indian food, and I'm like, I don't know that I want random Indian food in Colorado. I love Indian food, but I don't know that I want this. So I get really daring. The first night I order a steak. It was fabulous. Fabulous. And when I went in to pick it up, I realized that all of these people are Indian. So I ate the best food. I was there for 3 days. I ate the best food of the whole trip, staying in the Days Inn Bates Motel. So I'm like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get to my truck because I figured out with Google Maps that I am 4 or 5 miles from my truck. And I started asking the people, so if you don't have a car, how do you get around here? And they're like, oh, well, you call this number. So they give me a random phone number on a piece of paper. Call this number, pay them $10, they'll give you a ride. I said, okay. So I called that number to try to set up something for the next day when my truck's supposed to be ready. And the guy answers, and he's like, yeah, not a problem. What time? Blah, blah, blah. Random guy, random old beater shows up and picks me up the next day with my dog, all my bags, which are permanently packed at this point, by the way. And okay, so we get there. First thing that happens is my truck is in there a lot, but my trailer is nowhere to be seen. I have no idea where my load is. And then when I'm standing there, cops bust in. Well, they don't bust in, but they run in, and they're trying to find a truck that they have to search that these people have. And she's like, yeah, it's back there in the back, and it's parked right next to my truck. So she's like, your truck is ready. We fixed the radiator. I said, okay, that is awesome. Where's my trailer? And she says, oh, it's at the other yard. And I went, oh, okay. And she said, I'll give you directions, or I'll have one of the guys lead you out there. So finally, the guy comes in, he's like, I'm going to take you out to our other yard. And I said, oh, okay. Well, it's not a yard. It's their house.
Oh, wow.
It's a rural house, but it's a rural area. But that's where they park their trailers when they have truck breakdowns, at their house. Yeah, rural. Not a problem. Of course, Roadside is laughing at me at this point. They're like, can you break down someplace that's like populated? I'm like, no, that's way too easy.
Yeah.
So I pick up my trailer, I get back out onto the freeway, everything's going fine and wonderful and dandy, it's running good. I stop somewhere on the 80 and sleep. I wake up in the morning, I'm driving, it starts snowing like crazy the closer I get to Evanston. And my truck won't defrost.
Problem 11.
And my water temperature is super low, but it's also like minus 10 degrees outside. It's friggin' freezing. So I had to stop like every 20 minutes and let my windows defrost so that I could see where I was going because all the snow was icing up and sticking to my windshield. I'm like, okay, this is not right. So I get just a little bit past Evanston, Wyoming, and now nothing's heating, not even when I stop. And I'm like, okay. So I call Roadside. I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but the truck won't heat up. And they're like, oh, okay. So they send out a service truck, and he's looking at it, and he said, the only thing I can think of, he listed a couple things, but thermostat was one of them. And he says, I can't do any of that on the side of the road. So he said, is it drivable? And I said, well, I've been driving. It's just that I can't see because the windows won't defrost. It won't warm up enough. And he's like, okay, well, you can bring it to our yard, to our shop. He gives me directions. I drive it out there, and mind you, I'm in the middle of a blinding snowstorm. And I don't do snow. Las Vegas, remember? And he says, we think it's just because it's so cold. And I said, no, because I've had it in this cold temperatures before. That is not it. He says, okay, we're going to start with the thermostat. We don't know how long it's going to take. So I call, have him set me up a hotel in Evanston, Wyoming. And guess what? There's no Uber there either.
Of course not.
I'm like, how do people get around? He says, oh, the Jackalope taxi service. I'm like, okay. So I called the Jackalope taxi service, which is just random guy in a car. But whatever, I didn't care. Get me to a hotel. They get me to the hotel. Hotel says, we don't allow dogs.
Problem 12.
Except for in our pet rooms, and your company did not book a pet room. And I said, look, put me in a pet room, charge them for a pet room. I will call them. They will pay it. If not, I'll pay the difference. All I want to do is get in a hotel room where it's warm and it's dry. And I'm frustrated. Just don't deal with me right now. So we stay there. The next day, the guys from the shop come and pick me up. It was the thermostat. Okay, awesome. Maybe we're done breaking down now. Maybe I can get this load to Portland because by now it's been like 8 or 9 days. So I get into the truck and we're driving, and all of a sudden my check engine lights come on. And I mean the one that says check. I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Lucky 13.
I call roadside, and they're like, it got to the point where they would answer the phone with, hi, Vicky, how you doing? Yeah. So I have more check engine lights come on, and finally I get to Eastern Oregon. They're like, just nurse it as much as you can. If it breaks down, yeah, we'll tow it. I said, okay, sounds like a plan. Because I get to Eastern Oregon, and it's just pouring down snow, and all of a sudden, all the trucks are stopped, all the cars are stopped on the highway. I pull over on the side of the highway. Now, this breakdown, this one's my fault, 100% my fault. I pull off to the side of the highway, and we're sitting there. I don't know what everybody's waiting for, but if they're waiting, I'm waiting, and the roads are crap, and all of a sudden, this highway patrol walks up to me. He says, so, what's your plan? I said, I'm going to sit here till spring. And he started laughing. He said, I can't let you do that. We got to get you off the road. So blah, 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 blah. Okay. So now I'm on packed snow, and I cannot get the tires to turn.
El numero 14.
I cannot get any traction. I try, one of the guys gives me some kitty litter. I tried that. I can't get enough traction to get moving. I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to have to chain now. I don't chain. I know how. Well, kind of. And I don't want to. I'm an old woman. I don't want to be lifting up those heavy chains, but I'll do it if I have to. So I get out there, and I get the chains on one of my, and chains are not required on the highway. It's just to get me off the shoulder. So I get a chain on there. It's not enough traction. I put another chain on. That was enough traction, and I know that they're loose, but I don't care at this point. I just want out of there because the cop's standing there staring at me like I'm an idiot, which I am. And I'm like, okay, so I get going. I get rolling. I'm looking for a place where I can pull over and get these chains off because the pavement is just wet where I'm at now, but the shoulder is just full of snow. Finally, I find a place. One of my chains is gone. I went, oh, I must have lost that one. The other chain, I get it unhooked. Get it all unhooked. I get it hung back up on the hanger. I go maybe 50 feet, maybe, and all of a sudden I have all kinds of lights and sirens going off, and I smell something burning. I'd lost the chain all right. It wrapped itself around the axle.
Wow. Problem 15.
And there's no cars anywhere. And now I realize the road is closed on both sides of me. And I'm like, that bastard didn't need to make me move. He could have let me roll backwards into that rest area where I was. But anyway, whatever. So I get out there with my handy dandy bolt cutters. I'm going to cut these chains off, and I don't have enough strength to do it. I cannot do it. So I called Roadside. And Roadside's like, yeah, that happens. We'll send somebody out. I said, well, the good news is, yay. The bad news is the road's closed on both sides of me. So I don't know when they're going to get someone out here. Okay. So they send a tow truck. He gets through the road barricades. He said they weren't going to let me through, but when I told him you were sitting on the side of the road. Now, in the meantime, the same cop pulls up. Now, there's a tow truck, a service truck in front of me, and there's the same cop pulls up, and he says, I told you couldn't park on the roadside. And I just looked at him. I said, you see the service truck, right? You see my red triangles out there, right? He's like, yeah. He said, but I figured you were just trying to park. I'm like, no, I have an issue.
An issue? An issue?
Oregon State Patrol. He was friendly, but still. So the guy gets the chains cut off. he says, well, I don't, I don't know how these people do business. He's like, I don't have my invoice book. And I said, well, take my number and here's the number for roadside so that they can pay. Okay. So that breakdown was 100% my fault. So I get up to where by now the road's open. So I get up, I'm actually moving. And on a side note, that service tech driver called me 3 weeks later and said I did not get paid by your company. So I gave him the company number again, called the company. They're like, we gave them a virtual credit card number like a month ago. I'm like, yeah, no, they're going to call you. I don't know if they ever got paid. Still don't know. So now I'm going, and I still have all these lights and bells and whistles that I'm trying to nurse it through. And I get to my delivery only 9 days late.
Only?
I get to my delivery. I get unloaded. I get it back to our Portland yard. I take it into our shop, and the shop says, that's a Freightliner problem. You need to take it to Freightliner. I'm like, okay. Take it to Freightliner. Freightliner says, okay, we'll figure it out. They replace all the batteries and check the power net. Everything's fine. It's not a problem. I said, okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you for fixing it. Truck runs fine for a couple weeks.
Yep, you guessed it. Here comes problem 16.
Then all of a sudden it starts doing the same crap again. So I happened to be in Portland, so I took it back to them. And I don't know what they did. They fiddled with it, and they said, oh, we needed to replace the sensor. Oh, okay. So now it's running fine. It runs fine for quite a while, actually. Well, for my truck, quite a while. It was like a week. 2 weeks. Now I am in Wyoming, and it's a blizzard. And this was actually just a couple weeks ago. This is December, so I've been dealing with this truck since the middle of October. It started doing the same thing with the check engine lights and everything.
17.
Saying it has electrical problems. But I am in Casper, Wyoming. It is when the blizzard hit. So I'm there for 3 days hoping this truck doesn't die so I don't freeze to death. But it seemed to be running okay. And so there's a TA shop there. They read it and they said something about the sensor isn't talking to the computer, isn't talking to the, I don't know. Yeah, we can't fix it. That has to go to Freightliner.
Surprise, surprise.
So I call Freightliner in Casper, after talking to Roadside, of course. I call Freightliner in Casper, and they're like, yeah, well, the road's closed still. We can't get to you. And I said, well, it's running, so I'm not totally panicked. And they're like, you realize it is like the 22nd of December? I said, yes, because I was supposed to be home yesterday. I know exactly what day it is. And they're like, well, we can't even look at it until after Christmas. I'm like, okay. So I call Roadside. They're like, just keep nursing it along. We'll do the same thing we did before. If you can get it to our Missoula shop, that would be awesome. I'm like, okay. So the weather lets up, and I'm driving. I finally get this load to wherever it was supposed to go, and all these lights are still on. I get to Missoula, which we have a yard and a shop there, and the shop guy is looking at it. He's like, oh, there's this wrong, this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. We're going to fix all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, cool. So in the meantime, we're going to give you a loaner truck. You're going to go up to Great Falls. You're going to pick up a load. You're going to bring it back to Missoula. Then you'll get your truck on Monday, and then you can take that load, and it goes to California so you can go home. And I'm like, okay. He said, we'll probably get you home for Christmas. I'm like, oh, that wasn't really a big deal to me, but it's just time for my home time. Okay, no problem.
Vicky, don't you dare tell me this truck breaks down too. But I'm guessing that's exactly what you're going to say.
This happens to be when the Arctic polar vortex came through, so it's like minus 23 actual temperature, minus 38 with the wind chill factor in Missoula, Montana. I'm in this loaner truck. That actually has a better bunk heater than mine, so that worked out pretty good. And Monday rolls around, and they're not done with my truck. I'm like, okay. Tuesday rolls around. They're finally done with my truck. Okay. So I'm like, okay, I get my truck get all my stuff out of the loaner truck, park the loaner truck, get hooked up to my trailer. Yeah, everything's okay. We're gonna sit here. The roads are bad. We're gonna sit here one more day, and then we'll go home and we'll deliver this load and go home. So now, mind you, this whole 2.5 months or whatever, I have been asking for a different truck. I need a different truck. This truck is not reliable. I can't do this. I can't be broke down all the time. I'm not making any money. So, and they kept saying, well, we'll just get this one fixed. We'll just get this one fixed. We just need some good mechanics.
Yada, yada, yada. Yeah.
So I sit there that day. Next morning, I get up and I'm ready to roll. And it does the same thing. It won't start. And all the check engine lights are on.
Okay, well, at least the loaner truck didn't break down on you. But at last count, this is number 18.
And I'm like, oh, God. So I walk into the shop. I'm like, dude, I don't know what happened, but it won't start. It's saying PCP, MCM, the electrical's not talking to each other. I told them the back history because none of that work had been done by them. And they're like, you need to take it to Freightliner. I said, well, I can't start it, so we're going to have to tow it to Freightliner. Call roadside. I'm like, okay. So I call roadside, but first I call my dispatch. My husband has always told me that if you ever need anything from a man, you need to cry, because once a woman cries, a man will do anything to stop them from crying. Well, at this point, I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I am so furious that if I walk up the stairs up to where dispatch is, I'm going to choke my dispatcher, literally. I'm just absolutely furious. And so I call him, and I'm like, so I called roadside. I explained, I'd already told them I broke down. So I called roadside. I explained to them that I had to, I explained to them that I called Freightliner. Freightliner can't see me until January 3rd. It is now December 22nd, I think, somewhere in there. I'm supposed to have been home a couple days ago. I'm supposed to be headed back out from home in a couple days. But home is in Las Vegas, and I'm in Missoula. So I have a meltdown. My poor dispatcher. I know, I know I'm being a crazy bitch, and I'm like, he's like, well, calm down, please calm down. What we'll do is we'll put you in a hotel. And I'm like, I am not sitting in a hotel for $75 a day until January 2nd. I said, here are your choices. You either find me another truck, or I just looked in a one-way rental from here to Las Vegas is $207. I'm renting a car, I'm cleaning out the truck, and I'm not coming back.
Atta girl.
He's like, oh, okay. So I calmed down, because now I've made a decision. I'm done. I calm down, and he calls back literally 20 minutes later. You can have the loaner truck. It's your truck. It's your truck now. I'm like, thank you. How hard was that? I've been telling you for 3 months that I need a new truck. So I am now in a new truck that seems to be running fine. We'll keep our fingers crossed. But that is my epic breakdown tale, and I'm sure I forgot to tell parts of it, but it's long enough already. Bye.
My, oh my. 18 issues that we counted, and like she said, there were probably many, many more. I think this totally qualifies as an epic breakdown saga, don't you? Man, what a nightmare. Now, I know this took place over a couple of months, but boy, when you get that many issues all at once, it just, boy, you get to that point where you just tell the company, get me a different truck or I'm gone. And guess what? They always get you a new truck. Well, Wunuvakind, or as we found out from you calling yourself Vicky, we now know your name is Vicky. Thank you for submitting this. That was great. I really enjoyed listening to it, although it was painful at times because we've all been there. We've all been in these patches where just nothing seems to go right and the truck is just screwing up on you, or the weather's bad, or, well, you encountered all that stuff. But, you know, you had the added joy of guys with mullets. So there's that. Anyway, I just really enjoyed the story. Thank you again for submitting it. If anyone else out there has a story like this, or doesn't necessarily have to be breakdown, it could be a 3-minute story that's about something that happened to you in downtown somewhere, you going down a wrong way street or something like that. I don't know. Just tell me the story. As you can see, audio really suits this kind of stuff. So just open up your phone, talk into your voice memo app, tell the story, and send it off to truckerdump@gmail.com. It's that easy. All right, let's get on with the show.
Hey, yo, bud, where do you want this load of feedback?
All right, who should we hear from first? How about Eric? Eric actually goes by Farley. Is that a reference to Chris Farley, or what is that there, Eric? Anyway, he just says he'd like to join the Slack group, and, well, you are, well, maybe a member by now. I don't know. I sent you the invitation. Also, we're going to hear from William. He writes in, "Welp, I'm going to try again. Hi, Todd. I'd like to join the Slack group. I haul grain and cattle feed in a 200-mile radius of home and love it, but would like to gain insight and knowledge on trucking. Been driving for 4 years." Cool, William. The question I had for William was, try again? I didn't get an email from you in the first place, William. I don't think I did, although it wouldn't be the first time I've lost an email. So let's just assume you sent me an email and I lost it. Sorry about that. Anyway, your invitation is in the mail. Thanks to Eric and William for joining the Trucker Dump Slack group. If you are interested in joining the Trucker Dump Slack group, which is basically a glorified chat room where we can talk about trucking stuff or whatever we feel like, we just goof around a lot. Got a couple of ladies in there too, Cici and Wunuvakind. We've actually have more in there, but they don't participate very much. But hey, if you're interested in that, send me an email, truckerdump@gmail.com, and you'll jump right in there and have a good time. And especially if you are a new trucker, it is a really good resource for you. Lots of experienced truckers in there, lots of people willing to help and not make fun of you when you get in a situation that you don't know or asking a, air quote, stupid question, that you feel like it's stupid. We're not going to treat you like it's a stupid question. For instance, David asked in the group just a couple of days ago, really, he's not a trucker yet, and he had a question. He writes, "I'm not a driver, but plan on being in school next month. I see jobs advertised that you can make a lot of miles if you drive hard. I'm assuming hard means driving as many hours as you can. Does it mean something else?" And, we answered the question in there, yeah. It means, driving as many hours as you can, but it also means, staying out long periods of time and stuff like that. So, a little stupid question got answered without a bunch of smart aleck comments. So that is what is so great about the Trucker Dump Slack group. If you haven't joined it, please do. Now, I would hope you can get the same action out of the Trucker Dump Facebook group, which you can also join. No invitation or anything. There, just search Trucker Dump group on Facebook and you should be able to find it. It's actually the Trucker Dump podcast group, I think. But if you ask questions in there, hopefully we would get the same nice people in there. It seems like they're nice, but it's just less active. And don't forget, I am the administrator of that group. So if I see somebody being a jerk, I will definitely call them out. They're going to get one chance probably to straighten up and they will be booted out. I've got no place for that kind of crap in my life. If I want that, I'll just go to my general Facebook timeline or Twitter for that matter. All right. Enough about that. I got a really fun one from Dave Wiedemann, but I'm going to save that for next week because I got a couple others ahead of you, Dave. Let's hear from Charles. He writes, "Just found your podcast, been binge listening. I'm only on episode 110. I just heard coping with new drivers. I've been around trucks my whole life and have been driving for 5 years and a mechanic for 40 years. Wow. I hope only to keep drivers from hitting things, never give directions, only yell when close to hitting something. Love the podcast for long drives. Charles." Well, thanks, Charles. Charles was talking about, my episode Coping with New Drivers and how I was talking about how I was helping a driver back in, and he's just saying here, yeah, I'm not going to help them, like tell them which way to turn the wheel and stuff like that, but I will be basically an alarm saying, hey, you're about to get ready to hit something. So that's a good idea. I've heard other drivers say that too, because like I think I pointed out in the podcast, you got to be careful about liability. I think if memory serves, I may have actually jumped in that guy's truck because I was just trying to get parked so I could go home for the weekend. And he was taking forever and he was in such a pickle and so flustered he would have never gotten him out of that situation, and he couldn't hardly speak English. If this is the episode I'm thinking of, I think it was. But anyway, I just hopped in there and he kept pointing at it like me do it. I was like, fine. We had trucks backed up the truck stop at Flying J and Joplin for a long way, and nobody could get out of the parking lot. If you've ever been in that parking lot, you know it's a nightmare. Once you get in, you can't get out. So, especially if some guy's blocking the way. So I backed the truck in for him. And again, that leaves yourself open to a lot of liability. If you hit anything, they can point right at you and say you were the one that hit it. So anyway, if you're interested in this article or this podcast, episode 110, Coping with New Drivers, I'll put a link in the show notes to that. And thanks, Charles, for writing in. I'm glad you have something to listen to for your long drives. All right, what's next? Cici. Hey, if you remember right in the last episode, Cici wrote me a mammoth email, over 3,000 words, and I was saying, wow, it sure would be nice if you recorded this in audio form, and I was trying to get everybody to write in to guilt her into doing that. Well, I sent her one little message over in the Trucker Dump Slack group, and she jumped right on it. She was all over it. So how do you like that? I didn't have to guilt her at all. Wouldn't that be nice if it was that way for everyone who wrote into the show? But no, some people just refuse to bend to my will. Driver Dave. Not to call anyone out. We'll talk to Driver Dave here in a minute. But hey, we got the first one here from Cici. If you remember right in the last episode, she just gave us a little insight into the company she was working for. I don't think she revealed who she was working for, but just the kind of job she had and, her experience getting into the trucking industry. And I thought that was pretty great. Well, she goes on to tell us how she listens to the podcast.
Also, now that I'm driving in earnest, I usually listen to your podcast while I'm on the road, and it is great company. Kind of like having another driver in the passenger seat to talk to, but without all the headaches of team driving. My favorite episodes so far have been 158, How to Attract the Next Generation Trucking, 137, OTR versus LTL Trucking, and 119, Winter Tips from an Alaskan Trucker. From an Alaskan trucker. I actually listened to that one during the Arctic boom or Arctic blast or whatever it was, and it was only my second week of trucking when that happened. So that was pretty intense, dealing with all the diesel gelling up because it was so cold. But anyway, I'm a bit partial also to the two-part episode you did with Zach about his first 6 months of trucking, 156, 157. Just a side note, I have no idea how many episodes I've listened to. I listened to them in a completely random order. I'm sure if I went back and looked at my podcast app, it'd tell me how many I've played, but I'm lazy and I'm not going to do it right now.
Girl after my own heart.
I also really liked episode 100. What makes the evil overlord evil. It was a nice change of pace, something that wasn't necessarily trucking related. And I just think it's really cool how often the evil overlord comes up and that she used to drive with you. I feel kind of like she's the unspoken co-host of the podcast in many ways.
Well, awesome, Cici. Thank you. Yes, the evil overlord. I've tried to get her on the podcast before, and about the only time anybody has ever heard her voice is in the bloopers. If you've actually ever listened to those, she interrupted me a few times, and we had a little conversation. So, hey, I don't even remember what episodes those were, so I guess if you want to hear her voice, you're just going to have to go all the way back to the beginning. I've actually tried to get her on the show many times, but she just, won't do it, and I've just given up. So she is the unofficial co-host of the show, though, for sure. Now, for those of you who just listened to Cici's comment, let me tell you about a neat little feature if you are using a podcast app. That is the speed control. You know what I'm getting at here? I'm going to poke some fun at you, Cici. Boy, that girl talks 1,000,000 miles an hour, doesn't she? I'm not going to try to change it because that's great. All that energy coming through. I love it. Really pumped me up when I heard the audio comment for the first time. But anyway, if you have trouble ever listening to anybody talk really fast on a podcast, you can go into your podcast app. Most of them have this feature, and you can actually slow it down, just a little bit. Or if you've got somebody who talks super, super slow and you just want to get through the podcast for the information, and you don't need all the pauses and long pauses between words and things like that, you can just go up to 2, sometimes 3 times as much. So there's a little tip for you if you're using a podcast app. But that means that Cici does not have to change the way she talks. And that's good because I've got 2 more comments from her, I believe. One or two. Maybe it's just one. Yeah, well, if it's just one, then Cici, I guess you better get on it for your next one. So I have 2. Don't make me a liar. All right. And let's finish up with Driver Dave. Oh, Driver Dave, what am I going to do with you? He writes, hello, Todd, with 2 D's, 2 C's, and 2 N's. You know, I never say that anymore, do I, Driver Dave? I was pretty proud of coming up with that, too. Anyway, he writes, I like your episode format, and I don't mind the long ones. Yes. Yeah, I was talking about the show in general, and, you know, what you like about it, what you don't like about it. Well, he likes the episode format, and he doesn't mind the long ones, as most of you don't, because you're truck drivers and you like the long episodes. He says, in fact, if you would just left the bloopers in the show and plowed ahead, like putting in the power divider in the snowstorm, you would elicit a lot of laughs and maybe speed up your editing time. What do you think? That would benefit those who don't always listen to the bitter end. Bitter end in quotes, meaning the bloopers. Yeah. Well, first off, Dave, I don't think you know what you're asking for here, because, you know, I was talking about how much time it took me to edit this podcast recently, and I got to thinking, man, you know, I think I told a coworker of mine one time that I probably make about 500 edits. Well, it's not that bad, but I went back and counted the episode, or the edits in, I think it was episode 186, maybe 238 edits for one podcast that lasted about an hour long. So, you sure you want me to leave all that extra stuff in there? I don't think you do. He goes on and scolds me. He says, also, I'm thinking you push yourself a bit too much trying for the weekly show. If you were to go bi-weekly or one a month, maybe you'd have more breathing space so you could Nintendo with your wife. Okay. Driver Dave, come on. I don't Nintendo with my wife. She tries to get me to Nintendo with her, but I don't. She's got a couple of Switches, and she wants me to get some of the games that she plays, which I don't enjoy. I can't remember the name of it. Animal Farm or something like that. I don't know. It's Animal Crossing. That's it. She likes to play that game, and I'm just not into those kind of games. You know, if I can't kill an alien in a game, I'm not happy. Destiny 2 all the way, PlayStation. Yeah, baby. Anyway, he writes, I just figured you weren't getting enough sleep, 4 hours, I think you said, and you were heading for burnout, to burn out a bearing. Remember the book recommendation on sleep? Just a thought. Yes, I do remember that book recommendation on sleep, Dave, but I haven't read it yet because, well, I'm stubborn and I don't want to quit doing what I'm doing. But yeah, 4 hours was about right. If you knew how much sleep I got with the last podcast, well, you'd be even more disappointed. But once again, that's partly my own fault for waiting that long in the week. For the record, this is a Thursday that I'm recording this on. Of course, the reason I'm able to do it is because I got to drive a whopping 229 miles tonight, and they put me to bed. That's what happens when you don't get started till 1 in the morning, and you're usually getting started around 9 or 10 in the evening. Yeah, by the time I got where I was going, no more freight. Yeah. Bad for me, lucky for the show. And lucky for my sleep, I guess. All right. Let's see. We talked about the 60 hours in 7 days or the 70 hours in 8 days. He has a comment on that. He says, as for that question on 67 or 70 in 8, it does sound to me like the company is trying to push the drivers too much. I thought the company assigned the hours of service schedule, and we pretty much had to stick with that. That's what I thought too. I wasn't really sure how that always worked. I've just always worked 70 and 8, but I didn't know it had anything to do with the logs. That was new to me. He says, now, having said that, back in the days of paper books, I can't remember how long ago, we would run the 60 and 7 or the 70 and 8 or the 120 and 14 schedule. In Canada. Okay. He says, and get this, we could swap back and forth from day to day to make things fit whatever suited us. Wow. That seems kind of lenient, doesn't it? Well, you did say that was back in the day. He says, really? Yeah, true, but only in Canada. And I'm thinking that ended maybe 20 years ago. Can't remember. Maybe that helps. God bless Driver Dave. Well, I don't know if that helps us, but it does give us some insight into the way Canada used to do things. And they sounds like they were just as easy as here in the States, you know, kind of lenient with that kind of stuff. Kind of look the other way and let things happen. But anyway, Driver Dave, thank you for the email. Appreciate it. Now you need to just man up like Cici did and do some audio recordings. And I'm sorry, Cici, if that was a sexist comment. I'm not good at this stuff. So, of course, I also want to thank Eric and William for joining the Slack group and Charles for writing in. And, of course, Cici for her audio comment. We'll hear more from her next week. And obviously, I want to thank Wunuvakind for contributing the main part of the show today. So, hey, if you have something to contribute, maybe it's just an audio comment on whatever you feel like talking about, like Cici did. Maybe you want to scold me like Driver Dave did. Maybe you want to join the Trucker Dump Slack group like Eric and William did. Or you just want to say thanks for doing the podcast like Charles did. Send me an email, truckerdump@gmail.com. And of course, don't forget about the Trucker Grub segment where you can tell me about your favorite restaurant that you can get to from a truck within a short walk, or maybe they have truck parking. Tell me what the restaurant's like, what the kind of food they serve, what the prices are like, atmosphere, all that good stuff. Send it off to truckerdump@gmail.com. Now, those are audio comments only, so you will have to learn how to use your voice memo app in your phone. But I'll do all the editing, and that makes it easy peasy for you. So with that, I guess we'll just wrap it up. I hope you have a great week. I know this week was a little bit of snow, and I hope you managed to stay out of that. And I hear this next coming week, we've got some snow coming back through again. At least we do in Missouri. Don't know how bad it's going to be, but we will see. Just drive safe out there. Be careful, okay? Okay, so I still don't have that Blue Parrot affiliate link set up, nor do I have the dedicated webpage set up with all the ways to contribute to the show, like donating directly, the Amazon affiliate link, or buying the ebook combo pack for 50% off. So instead, I'm just going to talk about something else that's really important: pancakes. My preference is blueberry pancakes with maple syrup, but I'll never snub my nose in an ordinary pancake, nor will I ever push away a plate of French toast or waffles. Basically, any way I can inject maple syrup into my system, I'm all in. And of course, that includes my beloved Fufu coffee. How's that for an ending? Well, thanks for listening and following the show. So until next time, drive safe and stay out of my way. Okay, let's start off with something a little unconventional. Found this one on overdriveonline.com. Drummer for iconic rock band with Overdrive. Nope. Start over. What this means that current drug... So, if they get this bill passed, which God knows how long that will take, they say that current drug drivers, what is a drug driver? So with that, I guess we'll just wrap it up. I hope you have great... So with that, I hope... I think this totally qualifies as a...